Today we're going to find out if my iPhone 14 Pro Max is actually better than my iPhone 13 Pro Max. What's happening, Panda Nation? Peter Von Panda here. You may have picked up the new iPhone 14 Pro or Max. I picked up the Pro Max, and this is the top of the line model that they have here. And normally I would not upgrade from one year to the next with the iPhones, but there were some upgrades to the cameras, and as someone who shoots a lot of video to share with you so that we can connect, I want to give you the best experience possible, so I wanted to get the best cameras possible, and this one seemed to have a few upgrades that might make some difference here. So I want to try one, the selfie camera, two, check out if we can see if there's any differences in the cinematic filming format, and three, I want to compare the stabilization between the two when we are filming action scenes. Alright, so the very first thing that I'm going to do here is I am going to film on both of these from the front selfie camera. Now, the selfie camera in the new 14 phone here is supposed to be better. They both film in 4K as far as I can tell, but the focal length is a little bit different here. And apparently, I don't know if it's because of that, but for the first time, this front camera on the 14 has autofocus. So what I have here is actually my iPhone 13 filming with the selfie camera looking at me, and I want to do a couple of things. So a lot of times, if you're watching me, you'll notice that I pick up something and I show it to you. And sometimes when I put this item up here on the camera, it has a little trouble focusing. In fact, sometimes it's a little out of focus. It's a little blurrier than I would like. So what I would like to do is take a couple of things here and put them up to the camera and see if the image is better on the 14 than it is the 13. Now, I have picked a couple things here with text on them because I think that's kind of something that your eye will recognize. So these Wilson Duo golf balls here, I actually picked this because the text here is not super easy to read, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw that up there. And I can see here when I hold it up to the selfie camera, it's just a little bit blurry. You know, compare that to my face here, which seems to be sharp and in focus, and is certainly a treat for you. When you look at this, you know, you can read it. Obviously, you can read that text there, and don't worry about the glare. That's from my lights here, but it's just not super sharp. In fact, if I bring it back here, it's probably sharper than it is on the front. If I flip it here on the front, again, this is pretty close. It should be producing a really nice image. So we'll check that against the 14. And then here I've got my little Mr. Rogers toy here. And again, not super sharp. In fact, kind of right here is, I feel like, where it actually starts to really look super sharp. So if I frame that in there, that's what we get. If I flip it around here so that you can see the text again, just a little bit blurry. Readable, but blurry. All right, let's try it on the 14 and see if this little drill gets any better. Alright, so now we are on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Should look about the same. I think I'm kind of cropped in here about the same way. But if I go ahead and throw these golf balls up here, does that look any better? And in fact, I would say that looks a lot better. I think, man, that is way sharper. At least it looks like to me on screen. And in fact, my face here is not as sharp. So it actually is kind of giving me a little bit of like a bokeh effect with the front selfie camera. I'm actually pretty impressed by that. Now, if I let it autofocus on me, again, not exactly a treat for you, but I seem to be in focus. Now, if I put this up here, what we can do is we can see that you can read the front. Now, I will say, even though it has autofocus, it doesn't necessarily seem to be finding it unless there's nothing else. So when I am here, it is definitely kind of doing facial recognition, but when I am behind there, I think that is pretty sharp. The text on there is pretty sharp. Now, what I will say is if I go back out here, it's focusing on me, and if I tap on the screen, I can force it to autofocus on this. So it's actually really nice because then if I go away here, it's probably going to leave me a little out of focus, but I can tap on me right there, just like that, and now it will frame me in. Let's go to the Mr. Rogers here, and again, now I have tapped on me, so it should actually look a lot like the iPhone 13, but I'm going to tap on Mr. Rogers' face right here, so just tap there. Oh man, that is sharp. Dude, that is crazy. And then flip it around, and I'm going to go ahead and tap on it again just to make sure, but look at the text on that. You tell me if you think you can tell a difference, but as far as I can tell, this is going to be great for demoing something with the selfie camera where I can see it a little better, where I can see what's framed in there, because that makes it so much more visible, distinguishable on the viewer end that I really, really like that. And then if I get rid of it, I can tap on myself here, and focus back in on me. So yes, it has autofocus, but it seems to kind of want to focus on faces. I don't know why. It's a masochist in this room. But I actually really dig that. So that is actually test number 1 completed, and I am very happy with the iPhone 14 upgrade. All right, let's check out the cinematic view. All right, so I've got my iPhone 13 here, and I'm filming in cinematic view, which allows me to focus on something in the background or in the foreground. It gives me that bokeh effect sometimes. Now, one of the things that is lacking on the iPhone 13 is that it only films in 1080p in the cinematic view. So if I look at this, it looks pretty good. I mean, 1080p is still HD, kind of minimum HD. But one of the things that I have noticed here is that sometimes it starts freaking out just a little bit and can't tell what is close and what's far away. So obviously the backdrop, the golf course is in the back there, but you can see here that club right back there is out of focus, and it kind of struggles just a little bit. So I'm going to tap on the front clubs here. It's probably going to focus on that. I'm going to tap on that back club there, brings that into focus. If I go up here to the driver, I can tap on the driver, and I can tap on the back, and then back on the driver. Let's see if I can get it on the driver. Yep, okay. And then on the backdrop. So it seems to work pretty well. But one of the things that I've noticed is that when you're kind of looking through spaces, sometimes it struggles. So what you can see there, it's kind of blurring for the most part what it needs to blur. But, you know, even between the clubs there, it's getting it pretty good. But you can see this white club there. That's actually the same depth as the regular clubs, and I think it thinks it's in the background or something. So I'm going to just tap on it and see if I can get it to actually force focus on it, and it kind of does. So there we go. It works all right. I have been pretty reluctant in most cases to use cinematic view just because, you know, sometimes it gets it right, but like I said, anytime there are spaces between things, sometimes it freaks out a little bit, and I'm trying to get it to focus on the clubs again. There we go. So that's what it looks like on the iPhone 13. Not a bad job, just not really high resolution enough for my normal use cases, but it works decently well. All right, now on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, same exercise here. I haven't done anything. I've just turned it on. It kind of does not want to focus in on that club automatically. There, I've kind of found it. Now it's focusing in on it. Again, it's having a little trouble. I don't want to autofocus on anything yet, but if we go down here, all right, same difference. That club way in the back there, right back there, seems to be out of focus. It is farther away, that's for sure. So, you know, that's not really a problem. But even between the clubs, let's see how it does. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Again, it's having a little trouble focusing on that white club. And I don't know if it's because it thinks that the white is part of the background or something like that. If I tap on this club right up here and try to focus it right there, what we should get is it focused. Yep. All right. And those clubs on the back still out of focus. If I tap on those, they're not really that far away, so I'm a little surprised, but I'm gonna tap on the clubs in the back, and you know, it's actually having a little bit of trouble. Kind of got it there for a second, so I'm trying to lock it, and it's kind of struggling on that a little bit. So if I go up here, maybe we can get it focused. All right, so I got that club in the back, but as you can see, even the edges there aren't super well defined. But if I tap on the clubs in the front, those are in focus. If I tap on the backdrop in the back, that's in focus. The clubs are a little blurry, so that works pretty well. And if I go back up here to the driver again, background is in focus, and now the driver is in focus. And let's go back to the background. All right, so it works pretty well. I do like it in general because I like the effect. I will say that there's probably two things. One, it kind of gives you that effect. It's not super perfect. I've noticed around the edges, particularly of items, especially if you're filming a plant with a lot of small branches, it kind of struggles on that. But now it's at least in 4K, so I would be more apt to use this because I would have at least the higher resolution that I usually film at anyway. So at least the resolution is higher, although I'll say the algorithm seems to work just about the same. Okay, on to the action mode. All right, before we test the action mode, kind of the GoPro stabilized mode where you're running around, you're biking, you're moving, skiing, whatever, I want to show you how you turn it on because that wasn't super obvious to me, but now that I know, it's super easy, but I didn't know. I thought you actually had to go into settings somewhere, but when you are in the video camera like this, right, so I'm on the video camera, I have picked my magnification 1x, this is kind of standard. You have to be in the video, you can't do this in cinematic as far as I know. Now you have another icon over here, here. So you have your flash that you can turn on and off, and you also have your little running man right there that you can turn on and off. So if I tap that, now I am in action mode. A couple things happen here. One, you might be able to see it went to 0.5x, so it went to that fisheye lens. And what I think it does is it's using kind of that middle part of it. So it's getting a really big picture, and then it's kind of using that middle part so that it can kind of digitally stabilize, so it can swing around when it needs to, okay? Now, I've noticed that you can actually go to 1x, but because it's shrinking down how much of the field of view it uses, it starts to get pretty small. So even though it goes to 0.5x here automatically, I think that's generally where you want to stay, and I think it's probably going to work best there. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is that as far as I can tell, it does not do horizon steadying, so it won't do any leveling to the horizon. So just like any filming that you do and you twist it like this, it is also going to twist. Now, that is a little bit different than, say, like horizon lock on the GoPro or on my Instago 360 cam, which I really like, the Go 2 one. That does horizon leveling. It's actually a really nice feature because you can kind of turn your hand, and especially if you are walking or you've got your hand kind of contorted or you're on a bike or whatever it might be, I actually like that horizon leveling. This does not have it, even though I think it could with the accelerometer and cropping in on this fisheye lens, but it just doesn't do that. So kind of understand that. Now, what I am going to do here is I'm going to take both cameras outside. I'm going to put one with the action stabilization on. The iPhone 13, I'm going to put in 1x. Obviously, it has stabilization on it. And I'm going to just death grip both phones and run with them. I'm not going to bolt them to a board because that board is going to kind of dampen any movement I might have. And I think most of us are just going to have our phone in our hand and be holding it as steady as possible. And that's kind of the normal use case. So I'll have one in each hand here, and I will run around and try to keep them as stable as I can, and then we'll just compare the footage. All right, testing the action cam stabilization mode, and a couple things that I noticed right off the bat is that it's not really rendering real time. In the screen, I was actually a little disheartened because I saw more jarring as I was walking, and I realized that the software is probably doing most of the work here, kind of stabilizing it after it's recorded. And so what you won't see is necessarily a perfect representation on screen. And I don't normally notice that on something like a GoPro because the screen is so small. When you start running with this thing, that is where it really starts to show how big of a difference the stabilization makes. I mean, it's just swinging around on the iPhone 13, and I'm really not moving either camera or either phone more than the other, but the differences in the recording quality are striking and stark. So I think that this is going to be an awesome development for those of us that are taking a lot of video on the go, whether it's family video, you're walking down a pier, on a trail, maybe you are taking dedicated action video, maybe you are filming while you are skiing or hiking or biking. And in some cases, if you are on a bike or on skis or on a roller coaster, it actually might help smooth it out. But if you don't have the ability to walk on a smooth surface, or you're walking downstairs or over rocks, I think this is going to be awesome. I am really looking forward to taking more footage with this. So the iPhone 14 features here are pretty impressive. I definitely am glad that I stepped up. The camera improvements are definitely the piece that I was looking for. The last thing I want to show you here, I slowed down the video because I was actually surprised that I really like the color representation on the 14 more than the 13. I never disliked the iPhone 13's colors, but when I look at these two, it just seems brighter, warmer, and more accurate to my eye than the 13. So I don't know if that's because of this new fancy sensor that they have where 4 pixels are used to give 1 pixel worth of picture information, but for whatever reason, it looks great. Even on this day when it is bright, I'm outdoors, got perfect natural lighting, it still looks better on the 14 to my eye. So my summary here is that normally I would not upgrade an iPhone a year after I got the last one because they are usually just such incremental upgrades. But in this case, if you're like me, you're just an average consumer, you don't get focal length and megapixels. I'm just a caveman. But what I do know is that my client is entitled to no less than $2 million in compensatory damages and $3 million in punitive damages. Unfrozen caveman lawyer! No, just as a simpleton, I want things to work. I want to get the footage that I really want. I don't want to have to think about handy cams and stabilization methods and a lot of other hardware. I want to be able to use the camera that I have in my pocket and not necessarily take a lot of equipment and get the shots that I want. And the iPhone 14 Pro Max in this case absolutely does that. So I am absolutely thrilled with this. I think it is worthwhile. I know that there are lots of other little changes. To me, a lot of those don't matter. I'm just a person who uses the iPhone for real life, real world uses. So if you want to pick it up, I'll put a link to it in the description below. Peter Von Panda, out.
We can discover more and explore so much deeper.